Chapter 4. Well, I didn't sleep well at all last night, and I probably failed my history test today. But all I really care about right now is that Evelyn and I are walking toward her house, and in less than 2 hours, we'll be meeting Chelsea and her friend Emma. We say hello to Aunt Susan, grab a snack, and head up to Evelyn's room to do our homework. Evelyn's favorite color is blue, and the light blue hue of her walls, blue and green striped comforter, and green pillows provide a soothing backdrop for us to chill out and wait. She sits at her desk while I sprawl on the bed, Lord of the Flies open in front of me. Evelyn plugs her speakers in and plays her homework mix. Evelyn may be my best friend, but we definitely don't share the same taste in music. The first song on the playlist is a Gregorian chant, a bunch of monks singing in Latin. The second features some famous children's choir singing another hymn, again in a foreign language. I don't understand why anyone would want to listen to music they can't understand, but Evelyn listens to this all the time. She's tried to explain it, saying the songs remind her of angels singing and put her in a celestial state of mind, whatever that means. Personally, I'd rather listen to the latest Top 40. My mind wanders as I think about Evelyn's comment about singing angels. Like I told her last night, I'm not really into the whole religion thing, even though I go to a Catholic school. But I do believe there's a God. People, animals, the earth, it's all way too complicated to just be coincidence. There has to be some sort of higher being that made it all come together so nicely. And Jesus? Well, he seems like a pretty cool dude. So I guess I don't have a problem with him either. We learned about purgatory in religion class, so I guess most people don't go straight to heaven. Mrs. Dawson had us look up a lot of quotes in the Bible, like when Jesus said, "The gate is narrow, but the path is wide," or "Be perfect, even as my Father in heaven is perfect." And St. Paul said something about being tested through fire. Once we learned about it, purgatory made a lot of sense to me. I mean, everybody's always talking about heaven, but I can see how most of us aren't really good enough on earth to get a direct ticket to paradise. When we talked about purgatory, Mrs. Dawson was all over the fact that a person who goes to heaven is a saint, not an angel. Something about angels being celestial beings or spirits, so people can't just become angels. As I listen to the music, I think about Grandma as a saint, not an angel, and I hope she's up in heaven. Is she watching over us? Can she go to God and ask him for special favors? Is she somehow behind me finding this rosary bead? I wore the bead to school today, on a long silver chain I found in my jewelry box. It's tucked safely into my shirt where no one can see it. Every so often it shifts against my skin, and I remember that it's there. Somehow I feel peaceful whenever I think about it. Now, as I lie on Evelyn's bed, I take it out and run my fingers over it. I force my attention back to my book. We got a test on it tomorrow, and I read most of the final chapter before I hear the sound of Dylan's voice downstairs. Finally, Evelyn and I both jump up, realizing that we're still in our uniforms, and quickly change. Evelyn puts on a pair of blue leggings and a blue and green striped shirt. I snicker as I realize that she matches her room, but I don't say anything. I put on jeans and a long-sleeved Knights t-shirt, showing my school spirit. We try to be all nonchalant when we go downstairs to wait for Dylan. Evelyn tells her mom that Dylan's agreed to take us shopping. I stare at the back door, uncomfortable with the distortion of the truth. Dylan's not in as big a hurry as we are, and seems to take forever to get changed and ready to go. 10 minutes later, we're finally in the car, headed towards Chelsea, Emma, and another bead. It's a beautiful day outside, with just a hint of a chill, as if winter's trying to pull the spring back into its grasp. The trees are beginning to show hints of green, and a few crocuses have popped up in the landscaping of the homes. As Dylan speeds away from the house, I try and focus on the scenery rather than the speedometer, grasping the door handle as he rounds a corner too quickly. Once we're out of the city traffic, Dylan looks at me in the rearview mirror. "So, Kate, Evelyn told me a little bit about what's going on, but I'd like to hear it from you," he says in his most authoritative 18-year-old voice. I take a deep breath and begin to tell him the story, just as I had told it to Evelyn yesterday afternoon. So now we're going to find out what happened to Emma, and hopefully we'll be able to get Aunt Liz's bead back, too. I finish as we sit at yet another stoplight on the road to Danville. Dylan doesn't comment, but instead turns up the radio, seemingly lost in thought. Finally, when he glides smoothly into a parking spot, he remarks, "Well, let's go find out what the rest of the story is," and climbs out of the car. The door chimes as we enter the restaurant. Chelsea's sitting at a booth just past the gift shop, and a slender girl with short, brown spiky hair sits next to her. Evelyn and I slide into the other side of the booth while Dylan pulls a chair up at the end of the table. I introduce my cousins, and Chelsea introduces her friend, Emma, before asking if she can get each of us a soda. As she heads to the kitchen to get our drinks, I turn to the other girl. It looks like she's a bit older than Chelsea, probably 19 or so. She has a very confident air, with a warm and friendly gleam in her eyes. "So I guess you came about this," Emma says, as she pulls a necklace out from under her shirt, revealing the bead that dangles from it. A bit reluctantly, she unfastens the necklace and places it in the palm of her hand. As she begins talking, she continues to look at the bead. Chelsea was leaving work one day last summer. When she looked for her keys, something fell out of her purse. When she went to pick it up, she found this in the crack of the sidewalk. She picked it up and saw that it had my initials on it. We're kind of like sisters. I've been living with her family since my mom had to move away for her job 2 years ago, and I didn't want to leave our school in the middle of the year. She was so excited when she got home that day and showed me this bead. I thought it was pretty cool too, but always felt a little guilty keeping it because I knew it belonged to someone else. Of course, I didn't know who to give it back to, so anyway, I put the bead on this chain and wore it every day. There was something about wearing it that, I don't know, something about it just made me feel good. Emma looks up from the bead in her palm and glances between me, Dylan, and Evelyn before settling her gaze back on me. Then one day, I was driving to work early in the morning. I work in a grocery store in town. A car suddenly came hurtling toward me, on the wrong side of the road. We found out later it was a drunk driver. The car slammed into mine and flipped over. I don't really remember that, or hanging upside down in my seat, waiting for the ambulance to come. It's like I blocked it out. But there's one thing I do remember. I was really scared, and I couldn't stop thinking that I was going to die. Then the weirdest thing happened. Emma shakes her head as if she hardly believes it herself. I smelled roses. She looks across the table at me and Evelyn. There was no mistaking it. It was December, but I definitely smelled roses. Then I heard a woman's voice, and suddenly I knew. Her voice chokes off, and her expression changes to one of wonder. I just knew that everything would be okay. The woman told me to hang on, that I was going to be okay. I felt her take my hand, and it comforted me. Emma holds her right hand in the palm of her left and stares at it as she remembers. People told me that they had to pry the car door open with the jaws of life, and the paramedics said I shouldn't have survived. I was out cold when they first found me, but when I came to, they were pulling me from the car. I asked them afterward if they had seen the woman who was with me, but no one had. But you know what I had in my hand? She holds up the bead on its chain. This bead. I don't know how it got there. It had been around my neck. The chain wasn't even broken, but the bead was in my hand. She looks me straight in the eye as her own fills with tears, and it smelled like roses. Everyone is silent for several minutes while we all soak it in, and I feel goosebumps on my arms and legs. Then, a little awkwardly, Emma finishes, I know it seems crazy, but I feel like, somehow, this bead saved my life. Now silence reigns for what seems like an eternity. What do you say to that? I'm sure not going to open my mouth and say something stupid. Finally, Dylan picks up his Coke and slurps noisily at the remains. The spell is broken. Emma removes the bead from its chain and holds it out to me. No, I can't take it, I say. It's yours now. No, it isn't. Chelsea told me that it was your grandmother's, and she told me about how you found the other one in the field where... Anyway, it wouldn't feel right keeping it. Besides, it served its purpose. I don't think I'll need it anymore. She places the bead in my palm, folds my fingers over it, and gently pushes my fisted hand toward me. More silence. I feel tears well up in my eyes, and a single drop slides down my cheek. Beside me, I hear Evelyn sniffle. Chelsea finally breaks the tension. So, what are you going to do now? Will you look to find the rest of the beads?